Hi, everyone. This is Gretchen Bailey with Optometry Times, and today I am joined by Adam Farkas of ODwire and CEwire. And I'm sure many of you are used to seeing us together on screen. Now we're together separate because we're usually talking together on ODwire and CEwire's live stream. But now we're talking just separately from our own houses. So, hey, Adam, thanks so much for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me here, Gretchen. It's really good to virtually see you again. It feels like we've been separated for a very long time.
It has been. I mean, it's been since you didn't even go to Seco this year, right? So it's been
Nope.
since the first CEwire, which was in early June.
Yep. Yeah.
Early
So
June, early
yeah,
February. Sorry.
it's been a long time. So I'm glad to see that you're holding up well throughout this entire quarantine thing.
Well, I don't know. I mean, physically, I'm okay. Mentally is another thing altogether. And I see you have the empty chair there. That you had a dog there on the most recent CEwire.
This is your chair of honor. It's been, completely empty now for months. And I have to say, it's a weird experience being here in the CEwire studio and having nobody around me. I mean,
I
it
bet.
is just empty here. It's desolate. So I'm looking forward to the day when you can actually come back and get your throne back over here.
Throne. Oh, I'll have to bring my crown. Well, thank you. Well, for folks who don't know, Adam and his company put together an online CE conference every year, and it's usually around the end of January, beginning of February. And this year, 2020, it was the beginning of February. But a few weeks ago, Adam, you had another CEwire conference, and I understand that you have a few more to come. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so CEwire is as you mentioned, a virtual conference. So optometrists can come and take CE at our, essentially it's just like an in-person conference. We tried to virtualize the entire thing. So we have 63 COPE-approved hours over a weekend, and so optometrists come and watch these videos and can interact with each other, very much like real CE. And you mentioned we usually do it in February. And usually, Gretchen, by this time of the year, I'm done. I'm watching baseball. I'm happy, but it wasn't to be this year. So right after you were out here and we did this, this whole COVID-19 thing started, and people lost the ability to travel to get their CE done. Yet we still had all this infrastructure set up, so we were in sort of a good position to help people who couldn't go to Expo East, and then of course there have been a string of meetings canceled since then, and people were scrambling to get their credits. So we decided to sort of turn the machine on again, get all of our speakers back again, and do the entire conference again in April.
And so, what kind of turnout did you have in April?
So the entire conference, basically the way CEwire works is, you get a registration and a pass, just like a real conference, and that pass is, if you show up once, you show up twice, you watch the lectures on demand. So far we've had about 4,200 ODs take CEwire 2020. So for us, obviously, that's a record.
Wow. So that's not just
Yeah.
in April, that's for the entirety of 2020.
So since we started back in February, so it's
Okay.
starting to snowball. 4,200. When we were looking at the numbers, certainly that's the largest optometric conference this year, not just for us, but anywhere. Again, just because of what's been going on, people really are craving CE, and this is the only way they can get it.
Now, I understand that there was a little bit of ramp up time in order for you to obtain approval to offer your CE again and have it count as in-person CE, because as we've talked about this, that states have differing values for how many hours you're allowed to have with online CE, if at all. And now everything online counts for in-person, which helps ODs, but it took a while to get there, right?
Yeah, so ARBO, the group behind this, and I can actually show everyone when this happened. So I can pull it up here and show you. ARBO, which is an association that essentially represents all the state boards around the country, came out with a rule, and this was in March, and I just pulled it up the sheet so everyone can see it here on the screen, this letter that they sent out. ARBO and COPE are the organizations that decide how to value CE, what's live, what's online interactive, what's online enduring. And anytime you want to get a CE lecture approved, you have to work through them and, get the rubber stamp and say that, yes, this is valid continuing education. And as the COVID-19 disaster spread across the country, they quickly realized that people would not be able to meet their CE requirements and they wouldn't be able to renew their licenses because no one could get to in-person education. So COPE changed the rules on everyone. And now it's through June 30th. You can actually take internet CE online and it'll count the same as live if the speakers are there and present to answer questions while the lecture is going on.
And
So the
that's part
speakers
of
physically have to be there.
and that's part of the CEwire model, is that the speakers have recorded their lectures ahead of time and they are present to answer questions, not just at the question and answer period at the end of the lecture, but during the lecture. And that's something that's a little different that you can't get with in-person CE.
Yeah, and it made a huge difference this time around. At the April show, we had some classes that had 800 to 900 attendees,
Wow.
individual classes. And because the speakers had the freedom to answer questions as the classes were going on, there was a large amount of interaction. We've had some speakers who've answered 30 to 40 questions in a lecture hour, which would obviously be very difficult to do in person.
That's incredible. That gives a lot to the attendees, that they're able to have that access to the speaker and get all of those questions answered. And eight
Yep.
to 900 people. I mean, that's the size of a plenary lunch at the Academy, or a keynote talk at the AOA, or some big venue at SECO or Expo. That's a lot of people.
I'll be honest with you, I think some of our speakers were terrified when it happened because, normally at CEwire, the crowds are big, but they're not like that. But people have, so much time and they want to take as much CE as they can, that the crowds just got enormous. And, I could see some people starting to get cold feet when they saw the numbers going up
So
and up. But
the
fortunately,
lecturers,
everything went well.
the lecturers did see the number of attendees in the room.
Yeah, they could see it. And, some of them were thrilled. Others were like, oh my gosh, how is this going to go?
Well, you said that this approval for CE runs until June 30th. Do you
Mhm.
anticipate that that will be extended, or is this 3-month period enough?
So that's the $1 million question. What's going to happen? They extended it through June, and again, I don't understand or really have any insight into Arbo's process about why they do the things they do. My suspicion is they extended this one through June 30th because of the AOA meeting being canceled, right? Because that's a huge meeting.
Right.
So many people were going to go to it, and that was going to be in late June. So I'm sure they thought, okay, well, let's extend this out till June, so maybe the AOA can get something together and people can make up credits, there as well. But the question then becomes, what's going to happen in the fall? I was talking to my wife Meredith about this last night, and she's like, "You're not really going to Las Vegas in the fall, are you?" And I was thinking about it, and I'm like, "No, I'm probably not, because if there's no vaccine, if people don't have herd immunity yet, and we don't, right? We're nowhere near the number of people that we need to achieve that. What's really going to be different, then than now?" And she's right. I mean, I'm not sure that this is something that people are necessarily going to want to do.
I think you're right. I think meetings in the fall are still a question mark, because there's Expo West, as you mentioned, in Las Vegas, and then there is Academy in October in Nashville, and it's too soon to say what's going to happen with those meetings. I mean, obviously, some states are opening up already, and I guess we just need to see what happens. If our cases increase, are the deaths going to increase? And even if there are meetings and people are able to go, who will want to go for health reasons plus financial reasons? That doctors have had their practices either totally closed down or seeing only emergency patients, and they're not bringing in any revenue. So even if meetings are held, they might be very sparsely attended. But I guess if those meetings are canceled, then perhaps Arbo might reconsider extending their deadline again. But if meetings are held but people don't go, then who knows what will happen.
I mean, that's a big issue, and I don't know. I mean, I feel for the people at Arbo who have to make this decision because it's not an easy one. I know that a lot of the states are still trying to figure out, is what's going on acceptable? Should we be allowing this much internet CE? Some states are dead set against it, like for instance, Florida.
Right.
They won't accept it. And so states are, completely opened up. I think Wisconsin was the latest one to just say, what, if you have to do your stuff online, what are you going to do?
Right.
And so it's hard. And Arbo is trying to force the issue by saying, we're going to issue live credits for internet CE. This is what it's going to look like on their transcript. Come fight us on this, essentially. And so the question is, can they keep doing that within the scope of the laws of the states? I don't know. How long do these temporary exceptions go on for? I have no idea.
Right. And then as well, too, what happens once we move past this initial, oops, that's my cat's tail. This is Huck, who's jumped up here to see me. Say hello, Huck. What will happen after that? I mean, is this opening up more discussion within the profession for more online CE? Because once you throw open the door, so to speak, can you go back and not have the same type of numbers that you did before? Because doctors might rebel and say, listen, this is not what we're going to do. So I think that's going to be interesting as well. I think Arbo is going to have some tough discussions ahead of it, as well as some of the states who aren't opening it up for online CE.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm biased, right? No bones about it, right? I believe in internet CE, but despite that, I think there is a place for in-person meetings, and they are very important.
I agree.
Because even though you can do most of your education online, and I firmly believe that you could do 80 or 90% of most CE online, right? You're learning about dry eye. You don't necessarily need to be face to face with the person showing you their PowerPoint deck. But there is always a place for in-person education as well, right? Wet labs, things that have simulated patient encounters, things where you need to see procedures. These are all done better in person. So I think, online is always going to have a place, but I think that these large in-person meetings are still going to exist, and they do have value. And I don't think it's going to be something that's cut out total, though I could see people making the argument that we don't need so many at this point, or, we don't at least need so many CE hours at each one.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. So if we switch back to CEwire 2020, so you held one conference in February, one at the end of April, and you're looking at another one in a few weeks at the end of May, and plus you're talking of a fourth at the end of June.
Yep. Yeah. So we're trying to get the May and June ones back together. The challenge for us, and this is the funny thing, is because to get live credits, you need to actually have the speakers there. The challenge, it's like herding cats, right? Because we have 63 credits. We have a huge number of speakers, and some of those talks have more than one speaker. So every single time we do this, we have to reach back out to everybody who's given us a lecture and say, hey, do you want to come back? And that's not always the easiest thing to do, but we're going to try again in May and June, and it should go well. And in fact, the last one we did in April, if there were a few speakers that didn't make it, what we did was we just got some other speakers and quickly put their courses through the Arbo COPE approval procedure. So we had replacement lectures for the ones that couldn't make it.
Wow, that sounded like a lot of work to get that done quickly. And perhaps there won't be as big of a problem as you anticipate to get everybody lined up for these dates, depending upon what states they live in, because those states might not be opened up yet. Or even if they are, these doctors might not want to venture too far, because end of May, June, you're looking at graduations, vacations, weddings, things like that, that may not be happening in person any longer.
Yep. Yeah. And so I think, we probably will get most of the speakers back. A lot of them are already committed to it. So the show will go on. I want to say one thing, though, because I've been thinking about this a lot lately. Arbo is sort of the people behind Arbo are unsung heroes in all this, because over the last two or 3 months, the number of CE credits that they've had to process for people is
Just from you.
I mean, just from us, right? And astronomical. And Arbo's, they're not a huge organization. There's only a few people that work there. And so they had this tsunami of people contacting them and having to run these credits through. And, and like you said, just from us, I mean, we had 4,000 people, and we've never done anything like this before. And Arbo has actually been great about working with us. Some of the credits are getting delayed for people, and if they call Arbo, they'll give you the story that it takes forever to actually input all of the stuff, but they were working on it. But they really, people can't see it usually, but in the background, all of the stuff is going on. So, more power to them for hanging in there, because I would have probably jumped out of a window by now. Because it's funny, if we make a mistake on a certificate, let's say, or if anybody does, where you get a date wrong or digits off in the person's tracker number and you have to correct it, it's easy to do if you're talking about a group of 10 people, 50
Right.
people, right? But when you start talking about 4,000 people, small mistakes start to get amplified. And so the people at Arbo have to deal with this. So, I'm amazed at how strong they've been throughout all this, handling it, because obviously they couldn't have anticipated this.
Right.
But
Right.
but they're really handling it well.
It sounds, Adam, like you, on behalf of CEwire, you owe Arbo staff at least one massive fruit basket.
Absolutely, 100%. The problem is figuring out where they all are, because they're
Right.
working virtually too. So
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you that it is, those people do a lot of work behind the scenes, and not many people understand all of the work and the time that goes into putting all this together. So
and a
before we
lot of
wrap
people, by
up,
the way, Gretchen, I want to say this, Gretchen, too, because if we're, can I get into trouble? Is it okay? You love trouble, right?
I do.
You love controversy. So
Thank you, Adam.
one thing, so one, no, but one thing that I think also people sometimes think, oh, COPE, oh no, I'm going to submit my lecture, and they're so harsh about not approving it. Um, they have acted as a real quality control mechanism for lectures, throughout eye care. People really do owe them a debt, whether they realize it or not. I know it can be annoying or, aggravating when your lecture gets rejected for a few reasons, right? It's commercial bias or whatever else. But without that quality step in between the person who's submitting and the people who are running the conference, the education would be way worse. And so, I just want to again say to them, thank you for being there and doing it, because I know it's a thankless job.
How is that going to get us into trouble?
Well, people. I mentioned COPE, and the people get up in arms, like, oh, they reject me all the time, and how blah blah blah. My lecture, they made me take this and that out of it, and people yell at me all the time, like it's my fault. I'm like, well, no, I'm just sort of, I'm just the conduit. But really, they're trying to do their best to improve the quality of the education. That's what they're there for. So,
Right. Well,
yeah.
also too, you have different reviewers for COPE
Mhm.
classes and I don't know how big that pool is, and I'm assuming that doctors act as reviewers in their areas of interest. So for example, if you have an interest in low vision, you are not going to be reviewing glaucoma courses, for example. So I'm sure that just like anything that has different people looking at your courses, there's a different level that some people are okay with certain things going through, some people aren't, and that's just part and parcel of having, I don't want to say approval by committee, but having different people act as reviewers, because it's not the same guy reading or gal reading everything. I mean, that's just not physically possible. And people are different. It's like grading amounts of neovascularization or injection. You're just looking at things. You have certain guidelines to follow, of course, but you might interpret that a little bit differently from the next guy.
Right. And of course, with CEwire, we put each course through Arbo 3 times, right? Because we're using them in 3 different ways now: live, internet interactive, and on demand. And Arbo requires us to put it in 3 times. So each one of those courses, when they go in, gets separate reviewers, even
Right,
though it's the identical course.
right. And you
So
don't
we're getting,
know what will get pinged by somebody.
but it's interesting because we get 3 separate eyeballs on it. People all, they have different criteria that they use.
Hmm.
But ultimately, having that many people look at this material has made it better, because when they've rejected something, they were right. I mean, I've come back and looked. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should change that.
Right.
So yeah, overall, it's been a good experience.
Well, that was some nice love that you showed to the Arbo folks, and that is well deserved. Before we wrap up, do you have dates already for the May and June conferences?
So yeah, tentative dates, I can pop them up here and talk about them. So it's on, if you go to CEwire2020.com, you can see May 30th and 31st and June 27th and 28th are pretty well locked in unless disaster strikes.
Well, you do
Meteor
have
hits or
those murder hornets out there, Adam, so you never
That's
know.
true. I'm never leaving the house again. When I saw the news report, I'm like, forget it. But anyway, so yeah, so May 31st, 30th and 31st and the June 27th and 28th, people have asked me too, like, what are you planning to do? Like, why are you doing this over and over again every month? And the reason is because we run 4 tracks at the same time. So if you look at the course schedule, and again, you can pull it down from the site, notice that we run 4 entirely separate rooms simultaneously. So the theory is if you go to one, like for instance, let's say you took Richard's class here, you obviously couldn't take these other 3, but then you can come back next month and take one of the other ones, and
Right,
the next month, and the next month. So the idea is if you actually do this and, you're able to sit for very long periods of time, you could, in theory, get your entire CE quota for the year just by
right.
coming back over and over again.
But you do plan to change up the classes a smidge, right?
Yeah, so if a speaker doesn't come back, we can't legally offer it as a live lecture. And
Right.
so for those, we're going to pull them and replace them with something else. And you can see, so for instance, you can see this one down here from April. That was a new lecture that we put in because we had an empty slot. And we're like, okay, well, let's just, go back out to the community, find a good talk and put it in there instead and run that through COPE. So that's what we did. But I'm anticipating for the most part, the lectures are going to be the same, and we're doing our best to try to run them against each other the same way every single time.
Oh,
So
so people can make sure to get the other classes in the 9 a.m. time slot, for example.
exactly. And of course, some of our speakers aren't thrilled with that, right? Because these things run all day, and some of them are late, and they're like, "What? I don't want to do this at 7 p.m. again."
Right.
But it really does help us to actually have the same courses running against each other over and over again.
That makes a lot of sense. So would you put those dates up one more time?
Sure. Let me pop it up here again. Whoops. There we go. So May 30th and 31st and June 27th and 28th, unless something changes, in which case, we'll maybe Arbo will get sick of us and they don't want to deal with our flood of credits anymore or something. I don't know.
Or the
Or our
murder
speakers
hornet?
will tell us we're not doing this anymore. We've done it so many times already. Let's do something different. But otherwise, those are going to be the dates, and hopefully we'll see everyone there. I mean, one of the things that we tried to do, and I didn't stress it enough, also is try to make CE as cheap as possible. The whole idea behind CEwire in the beginning was to try to make CE more accessible and make it as inexpensive as we possibly could, just to prove that we could actually. We started doing this 6 years ago, and it was really to prove to ourselves that education didn't have to cost a fortune. So
Well, you did the
we
math. What is your cost per credit for CEwire?
Yeah, so I mean, if you take everything, there's 63 credits for $159. So we're falling under that $3 credit zone. If you need to take them all, so
Three
it's
dollars
it's
a
pretty
credit. You can't even get a Starbucks coffee for under
right.
$3.
Yeah, so and we've tried to keep it as cheap as we can, and at the same time have the best speakers that we can get. So yeah, we hope people have liked it and we can keep doing it in the future because it's a lot of fun. And I mean, I think Gretchen, you know it too. Besides just the education part of it, it is fun,
Yes.
getting on here and doing this and dealing with and interacting with people all over the country and frankly all over the world. We're just seeking CET approval right now for the UK because I think everyone's really interested in this, and it's just been a real blast getting to talk to everyone who's participated.
It is a lot of fun, and I'm grateful every time that you ask me to help, and I'm pleased to participate. And in fact, you even have speakers approaching you to be part of the speaker panel.
That's true. And we have such a large panel at this point since we've been doing it for 6 years that I almost feel badly when someone approaches me because we have at least 100 speakers who want to come back, and we only have so many slots to fill each year.
Right,
So we have to constantly keep people rotating. Even folks that we love, they can't always be in the show every year.
right, right. Well, if more people come back and you're kind of voting with your feet, so to speak, that you'll be running this every year, and more speakers will have the opportunity to be back on the panel.
Yep. We can keep our fingers crossed. And we don't know what the future is going to hold, but my sense is that internet CE will become more important, over time, even once this crisis passes.
I agree. Well, Adam, thanks very much for taking the time to talk with me this afternoon. And we will remind everyone again about the dates, about the end of May and the end of June. And I'll be talking to you soon. Thanks so much.
All right. Hey, thanks, Gretchen. Have a great day.